A woman wakes up in her apartment, walks to a blue suitcase in the corner of her bedroom, unzips it, and finds her boyfriend dead inside. She calls 911 and tells them it was an accident, a game that went wrong. But on her phone are 2 videos she recorded the night before. Videos where he begs to breathe, while she laughs and tells him this is what he deserves. Before we go further, I want you to comment below with one question. What psychological factor do you think drives someone to record their own crime? Drop your answer in the comments. Now let me take you through what happened in Winter Park, Florida, on the night of February 23, 2020, and the morning that followed. February 24, 2020. Morning light filters through the blinds of a modest apartment in Winter Park, a quiet suburb just north of Orlando. Inside, Sarah Boone, 42 years old, dials 911. Her voice on the recording is shaky, confused, almost childlike. She tells the dispatcher that her boyfriend, Jorge Torres Jr., also 42, is not breathing. She says she thinks he might be dead. She says she found him inside a suitcase. The dispatcher asks her to clarify. Inside a suitcase? Yes, Boone repeats. Inside a suitcase. She does not explain how he got there. She does not explain why she did not open it sooner. She just keeps saying she thinks he is dead. Deputies from the Orange County Sheriff's Office arrive within minutes. They enter the apartment and immediately locate the suitcase in question. It is a large blue suitcase, the kind used for travel, zipped shut. When they open it, they find Jorge Torres Jr. curled inside, his body stiff, his skin discolored. There are no signs of life. Paramedics confirm what Boone already suspected. He is deceased. The scene is strange. There is no blood. No visible trauma, just a man folded into a suitcase, dead. The deputies look at Boone. She is cooperative, calm in a detached way, like someone in shock or someone performing shock. They ask her what happened. She tells them a story. Sarah Boone explains that the night before, she and Jorge had been drinking wine. They were having fun, she says. They were playing a game, hide and seek. It was silly, playful, the kind of thing couples do when they have had too much to drink and want to feel young again. At some point, Jorge suggested he hide inside the suitcase. Boone says she thought it was funny. She zipped him inside. They were both laughing. Then she says she went upstairs. She does not remember why. Maybe to get more wine. Maybe just because she was tired. She says she fell asleep. When she woke up the next morning, she saw the suitcase and suddenly remembered. She unzipped it. She found him unresponsive. She called 911. It is a simple story. An accident. A tragic, bizarre accident born from alcohol and poor judgment. The kind of story that, if true, would be heartbreaking but not criminal. But detectives do not believe it, not yet, not entirely. Something about the way she tells it feels rehearsed. Something about the timeline does not add up. They take her to the sheriff's office for further questioning. She agrees to go. She is still cooperative. She still seems calm. In the interrogation room, Boone repeats her story. She and Jorge were playing hide and seek. He got in the suitcase. She zipped it. She fell asleep. She woke up. She found him dead. Detectives press her on details. How long was he in there? She does not know. Why did you not check on him before going to sleep? She does not remember. Did he say anything while he was inside? She does not recall. The detectives are patient. They let her talk. They let her fill the silence. And in that silence, small cracks begin to show. She mentions that Jorge could be mean when he drank. She mentions that they fought sometimes. She mentions that he had hurt her before. Not that night, she clarifies. But in the past. Then the detectives tell her they have her phone. They tell her they are going to look through it. Boone does not object. She signs a consent form. She seems unbothered. Maybe she has forgotten. Maybe she thinks the videos will help her case. Maybe she does not think at all. But when the detectives review the phone, they find something that changes everything. 2 videos. Both recorded the night Jorge Torres died. Both recorded by Sarah Boone. Both showing Jorge trapped inside the suitcase, alive, struggling, begging. In the first video, the suitcase is on the floor. The zipper is closed. You can hear Jorge's voice from inside, muffled but clear. He is saying he cannot breathe. He is asking Sarah to let him out. His tone is not playful. It is not part of a game. It is desperate. Sarah's voice comes from off-camera. She is not panicking. She is not rushing to help. She is calm, almost amused. She tells him, "This is what you get." She tells him, "This is for everything you did to me." She tells him, "You should probably shut up, Jorge keeps pleading. He says he cannot breathe. He says his name. He says please. The suitcase shifts slightly as he tries to move inside, but there is no room. He is a grown man folded into a space meant for clothes. Every movement is restricted. Every breath is harder than the last. Sarah does not open the suitcase. In the second video, recorded a short time later, Jorge's voice is weaker. He is still asking to be let out, but his words are slower, more labored. He sounds like someone losing consciousness. Sarah's tone has not changed. She is still speaking to him like he is being punished. Like this is something he deserves. Like this is justice. The videos end. There is no third video showing her opening the suitcase. There is no video of her realizing something is wrong and trying to save him. There's just silence after that, and then, hours later, a 911 call. Would you have recorded something like this if you believed it was just a game? Would you have kept those videos on your phone if you thought they showed an accident? Think about that. The medical examiner's report is clear. Jorge Torres Jr. died of asphyxiation. He suffocated inside the suitcase. The position of his body, the lack of oxygen, the time he spent trapped inside all contributed to his death. The manner of death is ruled a homicide. There are also signs of blunt force trauma, bruises, marks consistent with being struck or pushed. The examiner notes that these injuries occurred around the time of death, possibly during a struggle before Jorge entered the suitcase or while he was trying to escape from inside. The timeline becomes clearer. Jorge did not die instantly. He did not lose consciousness right away. He was alive for a significant period of time while trapped inside that suitcase. He was aware. He was afraid. He was calling for help. And Sarah Boone was on the other side of the zipper, listening. On February 25, 2020, one day after Jorge's body was found, Sarah Boone is arrested and charged with second-degree murder. The charge reflects the prosecution's belief that while Boone may not have planned to kill Jorge in advance, her actions demonstrated a depraved indifference to human life. She knew he was in distress. She knew he could not breathe. She did nothing. Boone is taken into custody. Her bond is set high. She does not post it. She remains in the Orange County Jail as the case begins its slow march through the legal system. To understand what happened that night, you have to understand the relationship between Sarah Boone and Jorge Torres Jr. It was not a new relationship. They had been together for years. And it was not a healthy one. Court records and police reports show a long history of domestic violence between the two. Both had been arrested in the past for battery. Both had restraining orders filed against them at different times. Both had accused the other of physical abuse. Friends and family members would later describe the relationship as toxic, volatile, and dangerous. There were incidents where neighbors called the police because of loud arguments. There were incidents where one or both of them showed up at the hospital with injuries. There were incidents where they broke up, only to get back together weeks later. It was a cycle, a pattern. The kind of relationship where love and violence become so intertwined that neither person can tell the difference anymore. Sarah would later claim that Jorge was abusive, that he hit her, that he controlled her, that he made her feel small and afraid. Some of this may be true. Some of it is documented. But the prosecution would argue that even if Jorge was abusive, even if Sarah had been a victim in the past, that does not justify what she did on the night of February 23rd. Because victimhood and accountability are not mutually exclusive. You can be both. You can have suffered and still cause suffering. You can have been hurt and still choose to hurt someone else. Do you think past abuse justifies what happened in that suitcase, or does it just explain it? There's a difference. Sarah Boone's defense strategy would evolve over the years, but the core argument remained consistent. She was a battered woman. She was a victim of Jorge's abuse. And on the night he died, she was not trying to kill him. She was trying to teach him a lesson. She was trying to make him understand what it felt like to be powerless. Her attorneys would point to the history of domestic violence. They would present evidence of Jorge's past arrests. They would argue that Sarah's actions, while extreme, were the result of years of trauma and fear. They would argue that she did not intend for him to die, that she fell asleep, that she did not realize how serious the situation was. But the videos complicate that narrative. Because in those videos, Sarah does not sound like someone in fear. She does not sound like someone acting out of desperation. She sounds like someone in control. Someone who knows exactly what she is doing. Someone who is enjoying it. And that is the problem with the battered woman defense in this case. It requires the jury to believe that Sarah's actions were a reaction to immediate danger or long-term psychological conditioning. But the videos suggest something else. They suggest premeditation. They suggest cruelty. They suggest a choice. After her arrest in 2020, the case should have moved quickly. But it did not. Instead, it became mired in delays, procedural motions, and legal complications that stretched on for years. First, there were issues with Boone's legal representation. She went through multiple attorneys. Some withdrew from the case. Some were dismissed by Boone herself. Each change required the new attorney to review thousands of pages of evidence, which pushed back trial dates. Then there were COVID-19 related delays. Courts across the country slowed down or shut down entirely during the pandemic. Trials were postponed. Hearings were rescheduled. The justice system, already slow, ground nearly to a halt. There were also disputes over evidence. The defense filed motions to suppress the videos, arguing they were obtained improperly. The prosecution fought back. Judges had to rule on admissibility. Expert witnesses had to be consulted. Psychological evaluations had to be conducted. And through it all, Sarah Boone remained in jail, waiting. Waiting for a trial that kept getting pushed further and further into the future. As the case dragged on, it began to attract national attention. True crime podcasts covered it. YouTube channels analyzed the videos. Reddit threads dissected every detail. The case had all the elements that make a story go viral. A bizarre method of death, disturbing video evidence, a complicated relationship, and a defendant who seemed both sympathetic and monstrous. People were divided. Some saw Sarah Boone as a cold-blooded killer who tortured her boyfriend and then lied about it. Others saw her as a victim who finally snapped after years of abuse. Some believed both things could be true at the same time. The videos were the focal point of every discussion. People watched them, analyzed them, argued about them. What was Sarah thinking when she recorded them? Why did she keep them on her phone? Was she documenting evidence of Jorge's suffering because she wanted to remember it? Or did she genuinely believe, in some twisted way, that the videos showed a consensual game? Psychologists weighed in. Some suggested that Sarah might have been dissociating, that trauma can cause people to act in ways that seem rational in the moment, but are deeply irrational in hindsight. Others argued that the videos showed clear intent, that Sarah knew exactly what she was doing and chose to do it anyway. The truth, as always, is probably more complicated than either explanation. There is something uniquely terrifying about being trapped. Not just physically confined, but trapped in a way that makes you completely dependent on another person for your survival. Jorge Torres was not just stuck in a suitcase. He was stuck in a suitcase that only Sarah could open. His life was entirely in her hands. And she knew it. Psychologists who study power dynamics in abusive relationships talk about something called coercive control. It is a pattern of behavior where one person uses fear, intimidation, and manipulation to dominate another. It is not always physical. Sometimes it is emotional. Sometimes it is financial. But the goal is always the same, to make the victim feel powerless. In this case, the roles were reversed, at least in that moment. Sarah, who may have felt powerless for years, suddenly had all the power. Jorge, who may have been the dominant one in the relationship, was now the one begging. And Sarah, whether consciously or unconsciously, was savoring that reversal. But here is the thing about power. It does not heal trauma. It does not undo abuse. It just creates more of it. When you take power over someone else, especially in a violent or cruel way, you do not become free. You just become the thing you hated. Would you have felt satisfaction in that moment if you had been in Sarah's position? Or would you have felt horror at what you were doing? That is the question that haunts this case. In criminal law, intent matters. It is the difference between murder and manslaughter. It is the difference between a long prison sentence and a shorter one. It is the difference between being seen as a killer and being seen as someone who made a terrible mistake. The prosecution's case rests on proving that Sarah Boone intended to harm Jorge Torres. They do not have to prove she planned to kill him days in advance. They just have to prove that in the moment she knew her actions could cause his death and she did it anyway. The videos are their strongest evidence. In those videos, Jorge is clearly in distress. He is clearly asking for help. And Sarah is clearly refusing to give it. That refusal, the prosecution argues, is intent. She knew he was suffocating. She knew he could die. She chose not to open the suitcase. The defense argues that Sarah did not intend for Jorge to die. She intended to scare him. She intended to make him uncomfortable. She intended to punish him. But she did not intend to kill him. And when she realized he was in serious danger, it was too late. She had already fallen asleep. She had already forgotten. But the videos undermine that argument. Because in the videos, Sarah does not sound like someone who is planning to let Jorge out in a few minutes. She sounds like someone who is enjoying his suffering. She sounds like someone who wants him to stay in there. And that is the question the jury will have to answer. Did Sarah Boone intend to kill Jorge Torres? Or did she just intend to hurt him, and his death was an unintended consequence? The answer will determine the rest of her life. As of early 2025, Sarah Boone has not yet gone to trial. The case, now nearly 5 years old, continues to be delayed. New motions are filed, new hearings are scheduled. New attorneys are brought in. The wheels of justice turn slowly, and sometimes they barely turn at all. For Jorge Torres' family, the delays are agonizing. They want closure, they want answers. They want someone to be held accountable for his death. But the legal system does not move on their timeline. It moves on its own. For Sarah Boone, the delays mean more time in jail, more time waiting, more time living in limbo. She has not been convicted. She is still presumed innocent under the law. But she is not free. She exists in a strange space between guilt and innocence, between past and future, between the woman she was and the woman she might become. And for the public, the delays mean more speculation, more debate, more true crime content. The case has become a story people tell, a puzzle people try to solve, a moral question people argue about, but it is not just a story. It is a real person who died. It is a real person who might spend the rest of her life in prison. It is real pain, real loss, real consequences. Let us go back to the videos one more time. Because they are the heart of this case. They are the evidence that cannot be explained away. They are the moment where Sarah Boone's story falls apart. In those videos, Jorge Torres is dying. He does not know it yet, but he is. His body is running out of oxygen. His brain is starting to shut down. He is in the final minutes or hours of his life. And he is begging the woman he loves to save him. And she does not. She does not open the suitcase. She does not call for help. She does not panic. She just talks to him like he is a child being punished, like he deserves this. Like this is justice. What does that tell us about Sarah Boone? What does that tell us about human nature? What does that tell us about what we are capable of when we feel justified in our cruelty? Because that is what makes this case so disturbing. It is not the method of death. It is not the suitcase. It is the fact that Sarah Boone believed, in that moment, that what she was doing was right. She believed Jorge deserved to suffer. She believed she was the victim, and he was the villain. And that belief allowed her to stand there, phone in hand, recording his final moments while he begged her to stop. That is the psychology of revenge. That is what happens when pain turns into power, and power turns into cruelty. That is what happens when you stop seeing another person as human and start seeing them as a symbol of everything that hurt you. And once you cross that line, once you stop seeing someone as human, there is no limit to what you can do to them. Here is the question no one wants to ask, but everyone is thinking. Could you do what Sarah Boone did? Not in the abstract. Not in theory, but really. If you had been hurt the way she claims she was hurt. If you had been afraid the way she claims she was afraid. If you had been given the opportunity to make someone feel as powerless as you once felt. Could you stand there and watch them suffer? Most people would say no. Most people would say they could never. But the truth is we do not know. We do not know what we are capable of until we are in that moment. We do not know how trauma changes us until it has already changed us. We do not know how far we would go until we have already gone too far. That is what makes this case so unsettling. It is not just about Sarah Boone, it is about all of us. It is about the darkness we carry. It is about the line between victim and perpetrator, and how thin that line really is. Sarah Boone is not a monster. Monsters do not exist. She is a human being who did a monstrous thing. And that is scarier, because if she is human, then what she did is human. And if what she did is human, then it is something any of us could do, under the right circumstances, with the right justification, in the right moment of pain and power. That is the real horror of this case. Not the suitcase. Not the videos. But the realization that cruelty is not something that happens to us, it is something we choose. And sometimes we choose it believing we are right. Sarah Boone will eventually go to trial. A jury will hear the evidence. They will watch the videos. They will listen to the 911 call. They will hear from experts and witnesses and attorneys, and then they will decide. But no matter what they decide, one thing will remain true. Jorge Torres Jr. is dead. He died alone, trapped, afraid, begging for help that never came. He died at the hands of someone he loved. He died in a way that no one should die, and Sarah Boone will have to live with that. Whether she is convicted or acquitted, whether she spends the rest of her life in prison or walks free, she will have to live with the knowledge of what she did. She will have to live with those videos. She will have to live with his voice calling her name, asking her to stop. That is the punishment that no court can impose. That is the sentence that no judge can hand down. That is the prison that exists inside your own mind, built from the memories of the harm you caused, the pain you inflicted, the moment you chose cruelty over compassion. And maybe that is the real question this case asks us. Not whether Sarah Boone is guilty, but whether any of us could live with ourselves if we made the same choice she did. Could you?